Yes, sir. Nothing like the Discord macro beefs, right?
I love it. I love it.
All right, folks. Welcome to another episode of Drinks with MakerDAO Delegates. On today's special show, we have a very special human being from the Protocol Engineering Core Unit, none other than Kurt Barry. Welcome to the, I believe this could be our 20th episode of Drinks with MakerDAO Delegates. Kurt, great to have you on board. I got my co-host here also on board, Tim Schuppner. What's going on, Tim?
Winter is coming.
Yeah, for sure. We all got the Maker beanies on, including our special guest today, Kurt Barry, Protocol Engineer. Kurt, how's it going?
It's going great, guys. Thanks for having me on here today. How y'all doing?
Doing great, man. Doing great. Let's get things kicked off, and a lot of people might not know who you are. Protocol Engineer likes to kind of lay low, right, and do a lot of the heavy lifting. So kind of give us an idea of, for the folks that don't know who you are, what is your role in Protocol Engineering, and how did you get into MakerDAO?
Yeah, sure. I guess maybe I'll start with the chronologics. So I got into crypto back in around 2018. So I'd been hearing about crypto for a long time, and then like the Bitcoin price crashed, and I thought it was just going to like go to zero or something because it's all just a Ponzi, right? And it didn't go to zero, and then I got interested because it meant I didn't understand something, right? What I thought would happen didn't. So I started doing research, as they say, and like very quickly I fell down the crypto rabbit hole. I got very excited by all the things you could maybe build, especially a better more trustless open financial system in crypto. And long story short, by early 2019, I was starting at the Maker Foundation. So that was my first crypto role. And then I've basically been with Maker ever since. We went through the transition from the foundation into, the full DAO. And the whole time I've been doing protocol engineering type stuff. So writing smart contracts, reviewing smart contracts. I had a big hand in the liquidations 2.0 upgrade from the English auctions to Dutch auctions. And these days I'm focused largely on safety and security. And so I used techniques like formal verification or fuzzing and, honestly, just like a lot of manual code review. And I'm kind of responsible for that aspect of the protocol engineering team, is making sure we don't ship bugs and we keep all these billions of dollars of value safe. So that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I like to always say to people, and I usually say it obviously in person when we're meeting in conferences or offsites, that we're so lucky to have you, Kurt. I think that you're one of the, if not the smartest individual, I think, in the Maker community. Well, there's a few OGs that might give you a run for
there are a lot of smart people in the Maker community, man.
but nevertheless, we're so lucky to have you, man. So I appreciate you sticking around, putting up with all the drama for your mama that we have in the MakerDAO community, but all good. But hey, man, this is Drinks with MakerDAO Delegates, and usually we kick things off with a drink. Tim, what are you drinking today?
Again, not a beer, because I was on Tuesday. There was a public bank holiday here in Germany. At least where I'm living, it's federalism, so every county is doing their own thing. So I went to the mountains, essentially picking up chestnuts with my kids, and of course we went to my winemaker, I haven't been there for a couple of years actually, because since I have kids, I don't have time for drinking wine, but I should. And of course, I bought a lot of wine, but I also bought grape juice. So it's in a wine bottle. Yeah, thanks for not showing it. It's Bruno Leiner. That's the winemaker where my parents are going for, I don't know, a couple of decades already, and it's my winemaker as well. So I'm going to have a Traubensaft, so grape juice, a white grape juice from this winemaker. I already tried it, and I'm so excited about this, so I have to bring it here as well. But that's the drink I'm going to have. You both go with coffee, I guess, right? Because it's early morning still.
Well, I'm gonna embarrass you today because I actually have a bottle of wine that I decided to open early at 11 o'clock in the morning, East Coast EST, right? I don't know if you could see it, probably not, but it's from Bogle Vineyards. It's a Pinot Noir, which is my favorite grape. California, by the way, so we have to keep it American. West Coast. And I thought you would have something alcoholic too, so I guess we're off this week.
Yeah.
Next week. What about you, Kurt? What do you have?
Yeah, first I'll just say that, it's actually probably better to drink alcohol earlier in the day because then you'll digest it fully and it won't affect your sleep. So, there's your excuse for day drinking, everyone.
There you go.
Yeah, I do have the coffee because I'm not a big morning person and I need to wake up a little bit. So I've got in my cup here. So this I brewed this using a pour over method this morning. And I brought the packaging to show you because it's kind of a special coffee. It's got cognitive enhancing substances in it. So that's like, in addition to the caffeine, which is naturally in coffee, it's got alpha GPC, taurine, L-theanine, and DMAE. So you can look up what that stuff does. Maybe it's all placebo, but I drink it anyway. And yeah, I think it's pretty good. It comes unfortunately ground and not whole bean. So like the optimal coffee you would make fresh from whole beans. So I can't give it 5 out of 5, but I'd say it's like a 4.2 or something. It's not bad.
That's cool. And those special ingredients, they are legal, I guess, or did you need to sneak them in?
I think they're legal. I didn't check though, so.
Yeah, sounds super interesting. I love the French press coffee. So for me, if you don't get it in the full bean, it's fine if it's already grinded down, right? You could just put it right into the French press. But yeah, I'm gonna give mine a quick taste here. I don't know if you got to see the color of this Pinot Noir at 11 o'clock in the morning. Guys, cheers to a special individual, and I don't know if this is the right way to do it, but I wanted to, I know we're in the segment of drinks for MakerDAO delegates here, tasting our drinks, but I wanted to, send out our condolences to a very special human being who was part of the MakerDAO community, Nikolai Mushegian, co-founder of MakerDAO, and in New York City, we say pour one out for the homies. So I might have to do this on my floor here. And, lots of love for MakerDAO co-founder Nikolai. Rest in peace, brother.
Lots of
Cheers
love
to all you guys.
Indeed, rest in peace.
Yeah, an amazing human being. This could be the hard part of the segment here because I'm thinking of Nikolai and not even thinking of what this wine tastes like because, it was a tough thing for the maker community. But
it's hard to overstate the influence he had on the project, both technically and philosophically. He was really the driver behind a lot of the earlier decisions in both of those realms. And, I think the project still has a lot of his energy and spirit within it, like, especially if you go read the actual DSS code base. That's got his fingerprints all over it in terms of the design philosophy. So
yeah, absolutely.
His spirit probably lives on to some extent in Maker in some small way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought about if we could possibly get some of the OGs to come on and maybe say some things about Nikolai, but it seems that a lot of the folks that are still around, right, are either from the foundation days, which he wasn't involved with, from what I found out. So it's really hard to find someone, but maybe we could get somebody through the shows that we record here to kind of give us a little bit of segment where we can have a small memory of what Nikolai did back in the days, way before, you know, all three of us actually joined the MakerDAO community. So that's like pre-2017, maybe around there somewhere. I'm not sure, but yeah. But getting back to the drinks, how's that grape juice there, Tim?
Yeah, it's not like a juice, so it's really something that some people would probably drink like a whiskey. So it's, I mean, the color is not especially noteworthy, maybe a little more dark than usual, but the taste is totally not comparable to any other grape juice I have had before. So it's yeah, it's a really, I compare it a bit like I grow cucumbers in my garden, and they are so much different because they have actual taste compared to the cucumbers I get from the supermarket. And this is exactly the same. So this is not even the same game as normal grape juice. So this,
yeah, it looks very clear. It's a white grape.
It's really clear, but it has quite a strong taste. I initially bought it for my kids, but the kids basically say, yeah, once in a while we might have it. So I guess most of it will be on me, which is good. I enjoy that. It's really fruity, a lot sweeter as well. So you're sipping that. You're not drinking this because you're thirsty. But yeah, this is definitely a 5-star grape juice. I can totally see that.
It's a 5-star. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I think that might be your first 5-star drink. Yeah, I would say that mine is not as deep body as it should be. So I'm gonna give it. I mean, I'm not no wine connoisseur, but I'll give it a 3.5 stars. It actually has a 91 rating from wine enthusiasts, but yeah, I don't see it. Maybe it's too early for me. But 3.5, you give yours a 5-star, and Kurt 4.5. Is that right?
4.2. You know, I brewed it a little thin this morning, but it's, you know, it's a nice light roast. That's what I like in my coffee, like light roast flavor. And so it's I feel, you know, all the drugs kicking in, illicit or not.
So it's already happening.
And you are a workout machine from knowing you personally, Kurt. So I got to take your word for everything you're saying about this coffee. So I'm gonna have to look that up. Get me started in the morning.
Yeah, try it out, man.
Good stuff. Why don't we get into one of the subjects that came up today? I noticed it when I woke up, was that Sebastian of Strategic Finance, and also looking to cluster into one of the 3 clusters that have been proposed in the MakerDAO forum, was talking about turning back on the DSR, asking delegates like yourself, Schuppy, to consider turning back on the DSR. Kurt, I know that you've worked before. You looked into the TRFM, the target rate feedback mechanism. If you can kind of give us a breakdown what that is exactly. Again, the TRFM, and what are your thoughts on possibly turning on the DSR?
Okay. Yeah, those are kind of 2 separate but somewhat related subjects in their own way. I think maybe I'll start with a few comments on the DSR before I dive into the TRFM, because that's a little bit longer. And then at the end, we can actually wrap around and touch on DSR again when we've got a little deeper knowledge. You know, in the short term with turning on the DSR, the way I think about it is like, you know, what's the goal? So when you turn on the DSR, what happens? It basically means there's some amount of yield that DAI holders can capture that gets diverted, you know, from the protocol profits that are going to MKR holders to spend as they see fit. And so like one way they could spend them is by giving them to DAI holders. And so that increases demand for DAI. So if DAI were weak and under peg, it would, you know, bring it back up to peg. Now, currently, when we're backed, by like 80% stable collateral or something, right? Every USDC sitting in the protocol basically represents excess demand for DAI above what the like lending mechanisms can supply, or I should say the borrowing mechanisms, right? The demand to, you know, hold DAI and use DAI vastly exceeds the demand to, you know, borrow DAI. So at the moment, it would seem to me a little premature to turn DSR on, but I think there could come a moment probably in the near future if Maker keeps going down this path of, making large RWA loans, right? And then most of those RWA loans are probably going to cash out to the fiat system in some way. And that like indirectly is going to drain the PSM basically. And so as those USDC reserves, start to come down, then you'll get closer to a situation where there's a more balanced supply and demand. And because you want to make sure that there's still demand for those borrowers to be able to cash out, then you can, and also you're getting yield now because, there's, 4.5% rates, risk-free rate in TradFi right now, way above anything in DeFi. So, then you would also have the income to support turning the DSR on, which I think another thing right now is the system's kind of running negative on a nominal basis, at least if you account for MKR comp as well. And so, you probably want to wait till your income flips positive. So I think now is not the time, but, maybe in a few months or something, if the current roadmap plays out as it looks like it is, it could make sense to turn some DSR on. And then that allows us to differentiate ourselves against other stables, right? Is that, like if DAI is the only stable that pays you a good yield, that might start a demand flywheel where, okay, more demand to hold DAI makes it a better thing to borrow in because you're going to be able to, convert it to fiat or whatever, because there are people happy to take it off your hands to earn that yield. And it could be a big growth engine. Of course, the process I just described comes with increasing centralization, right? In that you have all these basically correlated jurisdictional risk RWA loans that you're using to generate yield. And there's an alternative monetary policy path for the system to take, and that's the TRFM, where you balance supply and demand in a more decentralized way. So maybe I'll pause there before I launch into what's the TRFM exactly and see what do you guys think of my DSR analysis? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. But so I'm not really opposing to this view, but I mean, turning on the DSR right now could also create this flywheel effect right now, even if we are net negative and even if the PSMs are still pretty full. But this could be something that we could do already now, even if it might be seen premature.
Yeah, I mean, you could just front load it, and then you just suck up even more USDC or whatever. But then you're really on the hook for, okay, we better start generating some income pretty soon, because you can only do that for so long before you burn through the surplus buffer or whatnot, and right, if flywheels with feedback loops can sometimes run away from you faster than you anticipate. So yeah, I guess my counter to that would be like, you want to be a little bit cautious and have reasonable confidence that you'll be able to generate the income to support those high DSR payments pretty quickly, because I think you'd suck up a lot of the free capital in DeFi quite rapidly if that happened, because there's like hundreds of millions or billions of stables earning like a sub 1% rate on Aave and Compound right now, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. But if all of those would just rush into Maker and DAI supply balloons, you'd better be able to start getting yield to support the DSR pretty quickly if you do that. That'd be my thought.
Yeah, but I mean, you can totally think about having some kind of instant access module describing the DSR rate, right? Depending on, I don't know, utilization of the PSMs compared to total DAI amount or something like this. That could be something you could totally carve a function for automating this.
Yeah, you can definitely pursue all kinds of automation strategies for it. I'd just say in my mind, the thing that has the long lead time and is harder to do is like getting these RWA deals set up, right? It's like some of these have been worked on and negotiated for months or like even years at this point. Whereas, you can raise the DSR in a couple of weeks, and like even shipping an automation module like you just described is, maybe a month or two when you include all the audits and testing and formal verification. So, one of them, my strategy would be to worry about the longer lead time one first. But on the other hand, like some sort of nominal bump to the DSR just to like start the narrative going, wouldn't hurt either. Like just put it up to 0.5% or something. Maybe just test the waters and see how the market reacts. But,
I think it's we don't want to run the protocol, you know, in a deficit, you know, put yourself out there and not be able to back up the yield. But, you know, I want to switch gears here because I know we can continue to talk about this, and we didn't even get into the TRFM, obviously, but I think the big 800-pound gorilla in the room is, can decentralized stablecoin scale? What's your thoughts on that? Yeah,
and so the TRFM is intimately related to that as well. My short answer is that no, decentralized stablecoins can't scale. There's a longer answer to that, which is like, why do I think they can't scale? And it basically comes down to the collateral problem right now. And so to start out with, we haven't seen any, you know, like uncollateralized or very low collateralization decentralized stables work, you know, to any significant extent. Because like, that's one requirement for the stablecoins has to work, which means it has to be reasonably stable and has to not, you know, collapse or something, right? Like it actually has to keep peg. And so you saw this with like UST, the Terra Luna thing. It looked like it was going to scale, but then it blew up because it, you know, as soon as the incremental buyers became less than the incremental sellers, and you turned into, you know, a crisis of confidence, and it went boom, right? So, you know, that takes a whole basically chunk of your like stablecoin design trilemma out of the equation. Like, okay, you have to have collateral to some extent, and like, you know, maybe you could be like somewhat fractional reserve the way Frax is, for example. But now you're saying like, okay, you know, the uncollateralized part is like, you know, at most like a small double-digit percentage of the collateral of the whole or something like that. So you're still talking about being, you know, 70, 80, 90% collateralized, right? And so you can't scale, you know, uncollateralized, you know, unless maybe you have a monopoly on violence like the state does, right? Like technically US dollars are uncollateralized, but they are kind of collateralized because, you know, the state can levy taxes and it has armed forces, and you don't have that in DeFi. That's not part of your toolbox. So you have to have collateral. And then, you know, what does it mean to scale? It basically means to be able to support like global trade or transaction volume. And so if you think about just say like the volume of M2 in the US, like broad money, right? That's trillions and trillions of dollars. Now the collateral, like, you know, when you're like the best case of kind of like one-to-one collateral, and usually in Maker you want to be a little over collateralized. So that means you basically need as much collateral as money you want to produce. And where are you going to find trillions and trillions of dollars of pristine decentralized collateral? Well, you're not. It's just not out there, right? Like, you know, ETH has a pretty big market cap, but it's a tiny fraction of just like US broad money, much less global money supply. And so you need, you know, these I say centralized collateral assets, and you know, you also want those for like decorrelation reasons as well. Like even if ETH were worth enough to support, you know, like a global scale money supply, that correlation in your collateral basket would put you at way too much risk. So, you know, you're going to have a lot of different kinds of centralized collateral, and then you're not really decentralized anymore, because you're going to have to be relying on the legal system to support these other collateral types. And, you know, maybe eventually decentralized stablecoins can scale, but that's only when you have decentralized collateral, you know, in proportion to the money supply requirements. And I think, you know, we're probably a few decades away from there. So that's my thoughts on why decentralized stablecoins can't scale right now.
Is there a definition of what exactly is to scale? And I ask that because I think the first app to scale on the internet was it was the not Friendster. It might have been Friendster. If you guys can go back that far to the I think it was the late 90s or early 2000s. But the first one to get end users. So I guess what I'm asking is, in your opinion, what is to scale? Is it having, you know, 1 million end users? Is it 10 million end users? Is it 100 million end users?
To me, scale means to take over a meaningful percentage of the global money supply, right? So if we just use like US M2 right now, it's about 21, 22 trillion. I'm just going off of numbers I just got off of Google just now, so maybe they're not perfectly accurate, but it looks like the data is coming out of the St. Louis Fed, so it's probably pretty close. So just call it 21.5 trillion, right? Like, my definition of scale would be you can replace a significant amount of those dollars with DAI. So, you know, say conservatively, let's be generous and say, look, if you can replace 10% of that, like you've achieved some sort of global scale. That's still like 2 trillion DAI, which is a hell of a long way from where we are now. So, you know, if a stable coin can't get to like multi-trillion-dollar market cap, you know, that's not scaling, in my opinion. That's how I define it. Of course, you could do it a lot of different ways. So that is a good clarification to make.
So it's, in your opinion, it's not about how many end users can have DAI on their wallets or cell phones, what have you. It's more about whether a stable coin, whether it's DAI or Frax or any other decentralized quote unquote stable coin, can become part of a state nation, right? Because I just don't see how individuals like you and I can ever, you know, multiply into a billion. It is possible, I guess. WeChat, the app, I believe there's over 1 billion end users in China that use WeChat. I could be wrong, but I guess you're saying that the only way to do it is by having a nation state like Nicaragua, as an example, make DAI their official currency. Is that right? Am I understanding that?
Well, what I'm saying is that you need to have, like, to be a global world currency or just a significant currency, basically a lot of the volume of transactions have to be conducted in DAI. And so that means like some minimum amount, you know, or minimum percentage of everybody's savings, transactions, whatever, are done in DAI. And so that means you just think about all the bank accounts that are out there that have dollars right now and do transactions in dollars. You need to replace some meaningful percentage of all of those, you know, with DAI, and have people using DAI or whatever the decentralized stable is. And a nation state adopting DAI, or, you know, like making it an official currency, would certainly help a lot with achieving that. But, you know, even if like the United States came out tomorrow and said like, hey, we're adopting DAI, it doesn't actually mean that the system could scale with the supply and demand to that level in a safe way, because you need the collateral. So nation states adopting it helps, but it's not enough, because you know, to replace a meaningful percentage of the money supply, you need a meaningful, you know, amount of collateral that is also itself decentralized. And if it's just some collateral that's controlled by like one nation state, right? Like there are a lot of US treasuries out there. We could collateralize a lot of DAI with US treasuries, but that, you know, it wouldn't be decentralized anymore. It fails in the goal of being decentralized, which is what the TRFM is all about, is a mechanism to balance supply and demand while maintaining decentralization.
Well, it sounds to me that not only do we need more beyond a nation state to adopt DAI, but we also need a lot of technological developments in this industry, in this ecosystem. So with that in mind, what are some of the things that you're seeing out there? I know we've gotten a ton of, actually at Bogota, and I saw you there at DEF CON, there was a lot of talks about the zero knowledge proofs. And to me, that along with decentralized governance and how DAOs can scale was the biggest subject matters, in my opinion. But what are some of the technological mishaps and also needs of this ecosystem that you believe are desperately needed in order for us to scale?
Yeah, I mean, well, some of them are technologies of science and math, and some of them are social technologies. So one thing that needs to change a lot, that's maybe a little bit of both, is wallets and like key management experience. So like those of us who are willing and able to like deal with, you know, managing our own private keys on a hardware wallet or whatever, are, you know, kind of very atypical among the human population. Like you tell the average person like, hey, here's a secret, you've got to keep it safe. You know, if you lose it or if somebody gets a hold of it, you know, you're screwed. There's no way to get your money back. That's just not an acceptable experience to a majority of people. They see that and they go, oh, I feel much safer in my bank, you know, like, because unless they have unpopular political opinions or something, You know, the banks are usually, you know, there are very strong legal protections, and even if something bad happens, you know, you have some sort of recourse there. Your money's not just gone forever. Like if you lose your password to your online banking, like you can get back into that. Or like if there's fraud, there are ways to, you know, back that out. And so people look at that and they say, yeah, this wallet experience is just, you know, I can't deal with this. I mean, look at all the people who are losing their Bored Apes, right, on Twitter. Like everybody makes fun of them, but it's kind of not funny, right? Because it really sucks when they, you know, lose this thing that was a big chunk of their net worth for a lot of them. And so the wallet experience just has to get a lot better. Maybe that is a combination of things like account abstraction at the protocol level, social recovery, better hardware devices, you know, just maybe easier ways to do key sharding for end users. You know, something where you can still retain like the strong property rights of private key management. So there's not some like centralized custodian that can just rug everybody, but where normal people can like feel safer and more comfortable using private keys without, you know, having to worry about accidentally putting their seed phrase into some Discord scam and losing everything. So I think that's maybe the biggest barrier to mass adoption. You know, you mentioned zero knowledge proofs, like that's a tech thing that's going to have huge impacts on the scaling side. Like, ironically, they're less about concealing things, although they do have interesting privacy use cases, which I'm, you know, hopeful will catch something of, you know, some enthusiasm. But, you know, they by allowing you to prove things without revealing all, like you basically, they allow you to prove something about, you know, something that happened or some computation that was done without having to show the whole computation. It's like if you could prove to your professor in a math class, like, hey, look, I got the answer and I did it the right way, but you don't have to check all my work. Right? It's you know, that'll have big effects for just, you know, increasing the transaction throughput through L2s and stuff. You know, that's just, you know, obviously required after our experiences with gas prices. And then the last one is, I think there needs to be like a social technology, which is like this mass movement in favor of crypto, in favor of the right to transact, in favor of the right to financial sovereignty. Because otherwise, like, we're stuck in this equilibrium where any entrenched power is going to oppose that, because it's like, well, I want to use my power to censor my enemies. And like, you know, it's not about any like particular, you know, group or faction is particularly evil. They all want to do it, right? They're like, look, I have, you know, if I'm in power, I want to be able to censor stuff. So they're all like very hesitant, right? Or the one that's in power right now is always very hesitant to like go along with that. And the only way to overcome that sort of thing is to just have, you know, a mass movement where you can get everybody to agree, like, hey, look, you know, we want this is better, you know, the openness, the permissionlessness, you know, the stronger financial rights, you know, we want that. And, you know, so I think you need a bit of like a crypto reformation as social technology as well.
But I don't know, I always felt that this third part about the adoption is actually something that you cannot enforce without having an easy to use product or a stack of products that appear. And I agree, this wallet experience, that my parents for sure will never do that. But I think it's the same way as probably one generation older was not capable of, I don't know, dealing with smartphones or the internet. So I think this is just a natural thing that evolves over time. I just wonder if, I mean, this easy wallet thing, to a certain extent, you can solve this with some custodian thing. So it could even be state driven, but it's kind of, yeah, defeats the purpose of not being censorable and not being custodian. So I wonder if, I don't know, zero knowledge proof actually could be a way to get this custodian aspect of ease of use out of the system. I don't know. Maybe you have ideas around that, or is that something that is floating around in the tech community in crypto already?
Let's see. Off the top of my head, I don't know of any way you can directly use zero knowledge proofs to solve the wallet issue without, you know, and like get rid of custodians in some way. I mean, I think zero knowledge proofs can definitely play a role, like in privacy and making it safer for people to transact with cryptocurrencies without, you know, just revealing everything they're doing to anybody who's watching the blockchain and knows their address. I mean, there are some like crypto advancements that like might, if they were like theoretical advances in cryptography that could occur, that would make it easier. Like if you could do something called the abbreviated IO, it's like some sort of obfuscation, basically, where it would be like you could have a program that has a private key embedded in it, but the embedding is obfuscated in some way such that you can't extract the private key from looking at the program, but you can still run the program and sign things with it. That, you know, things like that might have a role to play. I'm not up on the latest cryptographic advances, but I don't think we can do that kind of obfuscation yet. It may, you know, it may not be possible. But yeah, that's actually an interesting point. I'll have to think about that a little bit, is that could you use zero knowledge proofs in some way to help with the wallet experience? I'll have to punt on that. You know, maybe some ZKP experts out there know more.
I was actually disappointed that this third aspect you mentioned about those, how was you phrasing it? Like a crypto reformation?
Yes.
That was the term you used, yeah. I was actually pretty disappointed that we are not in this state yet. So when I joined crypto, and I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, I mean, joined, like bought some crypto and yeah, got a bit into the game, not like you really joined the project. I was actually thinking, hell, well, when I look back how the internet evolved in the 90s, it didn't took 10 years for mass adoption. And now we are in this game for more than 5 years already, and we are not in the mode of mass adoption. We are talking about regulations and stuff. That it's not that, yeah, what's the term? Average John and Joe is really doing that. And I'm not even talking about buying crypto for leveraging or for diversification or whatever, but really for use cases, really applications built on top of the blockchain. I don't know. I hope that in 5 years we are there, but I might be disappointed again in 5 years, but I hope not.
I mean, I think we're getting close. Like we might have gotten there already in, you know, like 2021 if we had scaling technologies ready, because DeFi was taking off in a big way. Like, you know, completely permissionless trading was kind of like an obvious product market fit. Permissionless lending and borrowing, you know, even though it wasn't super collateral efficient, you know, people were like, oh, this is great, you know, we love this. But then it started, you know, to cost $400 to, you know, like use MakerDAO for one transaction or something, and pretty quickly, you know, all interest died in it. So, you know, I think if transaction costs can be brought way down for that sort of thing, I think there is a natural desire for it. It's just that, you know, the hype got ahead of where the tech was, and, you know, maybe next time it'll be a little different when we have roll-ups and such.
Is it actually still a topic to bring the whole multi-collateral DAI stack onto some L2? Like with vaults and that, not with wormholing DAI, but oh no, what's the teleport is the right term now, but really deploying the full stack somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, that's in progress. Like I'm reviewing a PR right now. Well, not literally right now because I'm talking to you guys, but I was reviewing it yesterday. That's, you know, getting very close to having, you know, the final tweaks put on to allow minting of DAI on L2s. And, you know, the reason it's complicated is you want the system to have a unified accounting, right? It's not like Uniswap where you're just like, oh yeah, we'll just deploy the same contracts everywhere and, you know, just make sure that the right governance, you know, multi-sig or whatever, or voting contract has control over them. It's like, you know, the Maker system is one unified thing and there's one global DAI. And so you have to make sure the accounting can be done correctly, especially during the emergency shutdown process, which makes everything we do, you know, 10 times more complicated. And so that's why we couldn't just, you know, like just throw it, just deploy it, you know, as is. But, you know, at this point, it's like we figured out solutions for everything. They're pretty much implemented. You know, there will have to be like some audits and some security work done and that sort of thing. But there are no unsolved problems left. Let me put it that way. And the code is getting pretty close. So yeah, coming somewhat soon. I mean, it depends on governance priorities as well. Obviously, right? Like we just had all this in-game stuff voted in, and everybody always has things they want. So we'll see how that shakes out. But there are no like obstacles on a technical level, really.
But it's rather months, not years.
Yeah, definitely months, not years. And again, it all depends on like priorities and what else is in the pipeline and has to be attended to, that sort of thing.
This is great news. I'm so happy to hear this, because I'm a big fan of this new cross-chain dApps that I've been hearing a lot about lately on Twitter, and just wondering how Maker was thinking about getting not left behind. Sometimes I feel like during the DeFi summer, MakerDAO was getting left behind. I'm not the only one to say this, by the way. Was getting left behind with all the innovations. There are folks who said that Compound went 5 steps ahead of MakerDAO and Aave back then when things were rocking and rolling. So I'm excited to hear that there will be layer 2 vault soon. But with that in mind, and I know you brought up an interesting pivot that the MakerDAO community has decided on, which is the endgame plan. Any thoughts there with regards to the endgame plan? What do you see the positives and the cons with regards to the entire proposal?
To be honest, it kept changing so frequently that I haven't really followed it super closely. It's sort of one of those things like, well, when this gets more definite, then I'll worry about it more. To the extent that I do know about it, there are a few different pieces to it. So one piece is expanding the product offering to include some sort of like synthetic ether, where you can collateralize DAI and mint an ETH pegged thing against it. That seems like a natural and useful thing to have. It's sort of like the mirror image of the current use ETH to mint DAI market. That seems like good thing to build. Then I know there's like the whole MetaDAO thing. I think I have maybe a slightly dimmer view of that because it just sounds like a bunch of this Ponzi-nomic yield farming that we already know how it ends. But I think there's certain, like there is some value in like spinning certain things out of the DAO so that they aren't part of the main governance process and simplifying it in that way. So long as like there isn't too much like excessive focus on, just like pump and dump yield farming crap. Like I'm just hopeful that the teams that do MetaDAOs do them in a sensible way that doesn't negatively impact the Maker protocol or the reputation thereof. And then what else is there in that? I mean, I know there are like all these like stances in terms of like collateral mixes and decentralizing, but I'm really actually a little fuzzy on what all the details are. So. Anything in particular you want to tell me about and then have me comment on?
Well, I mean, I'm a big proponent of the end game. I think it does help with a lot of the bureaucratic issues that the DAO had when we were just running the protocol the old-fashioned way, and it's still being run that way, where core units were kind of silos, and I felt that as a delegate, and Tim, you can comment on this if you disagree or agree, but we were sort of kind of making decisions on behalf of the protocol while we were in a black box where we didn't know what, as an example, the growth team was doing with real world finance and what protocol engineering was doing with regards to an implementation that growth core unit was working on. So I'm hopeful that the end game will kind of break all that down, and delegates and the Decentralized Voter Committee, known as DVCs, as the ability for us to kind of see inside and come to a consensus. That way we don't have a lot of the bureaucratic issues when it came to passing a new proposal through governance and things of that nature. Not sure how you feel about that, Tim, but that's my hope.
So and just to give one remark, Kurt, you said you're a bit fuzzy and you don't have followed all the details. I actually think this is a good thing, because it kind of it shows how protocol engineering is working. You have heads down, you're working on the stuff you're supposed to work on, and you just keep flowing. And that's really great. And I think, yeah, you and Derek and yeah, the whole team should be proud of that, because from other core units, I've heard the total opposite, that the whole endgame thing is a total distraction, and nobody knows where we're heading to. And I totally get that. I think it's a natural and human thing to be in that state. But saying, hey, I haven't followed everything of that, I don't have a clear opinion, but I'm working on just reviewing the pull request to get, I don't know, vaults onto an L2 or something like this. That's the stuff that's brilliant. This is why I think protocol engineering is really outstanding there. So that's, yeah. Yeah, we had Derek here, I don't know, like 2 months ago, 6 weeks ago, something like this. And it kind of completes that, because he was basically saying that, of course, he has to deal with that. And he's pulling in Rune into sessions with protocol engineering as well to get feedback or to discuss things. But it's really cool to hear that, yeah, you just keep delivering. That's really cool. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, we could spend all our time if we wanted to, you know, just following the ins and outs of all the government's discussions. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's the MKR holders and the delegates who are going to determine the path of things. And so, like, I'm always happy to come in and, like, give my, like, technical opinion on something if somebody is interested in that, right, from the protocol engineering perspective. But yeah, like you say, if we're going to get anything done at all, like we've at some point you've got to just say, well, you know, at some point, you know, there will be a vote and things will work out, and you know, hopefully we've given any input we needed to, but like that's not our main job. You know, we've got to build stuff for the protocol. We've got to do the executives. We've got to make sure we don't get hacked. We got to, you know, innovate with D3Ms and L2 minting of DAI, and yeah, like you just got to compartmentalize at some point.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to affect you one day or the other for sure. But
yeah, I mean, we certainly keep an eye on it and discuss it a bit. And I mean, like Derek is a lot more involved with it than say I am. You know, like he does a lot. He doesn't get as much credit as he should in terms of, you know, shielding the, you know, technical contributors from a lot of the bureaucracy. But you know, so it's, you know, I'd be lying if I said, like, you know, we hadn't talked about it at all, right? Obviously, it's been a topic of discussion, but we try not to let it get in the way of doing what 100% needs to be done when, like, this is stuff that's, okay, will it need to be done or not? We'll find out, you know?
No, I think Derek is doing a terrific job there. That's at least from how I see it from the outside and from the signals I get from contributors of the core unit.
Yeah. We're very lucky to have Derek.
Yeah. Is there actually something that is already changing the scope of, let's say, what you're going to work on in 6 months, or is that something you don't see at all right now, or is that
we're getting, now that Endgame is voted in, you know, like Derek came into a meeting the other day and he's like, okay, yeah, here's the list of all the stuff that theoretically has to get prioritized within the next year for Endgame. So we are starting to talk about it now, right? It is entering the discussions. So it's still at the early stages, you know. Otherwise, I'd probably have been a lot better informed here on this call. But yeah, so since it's been voted in, right? Like now we've actually got to get serious about understanding, like, what's in there. What are all these things that Rune is talking about? How many of them are stuff that we need to work on? And you know, what does that actually look like?
Yeah, I mean, all those items on the backlog need to be brought into the correct order, right? And there's just so much work that can be done, and so many topics that can be done in parallel. So this needs to get sorted out.
Cool. And Kurt, what are some of the things? I know recently there's a MIP 81 by Coinbase Rewards, which is asking the Maker protocol and MKR token holders to approve moving out of the PEG stability module, the PSM, the USDC PSM, approximately 1.6 billion USDC to Coinbase Rewards. And I saw you make a comment about how important it is to work on some type of solution where it's on chain and perhaps a smart contract that can still custody that USDC. So what are some of the things, including that one, that you want to see the protocol take very, very serious in order for it to continue to move forward?
Yeah, I mean, that was really like a risk minimization comment. It's like, when you're talking like $1.6 billion or whatever, if you're just giving that to Coinbase to custody, you have to trust, them to do what they say with it, that, they'll custody it, the custody will be safe, and they're not going to turn around and rehypothecate it or something behind your back, which of course they're going to say they aren't, but the whole and they're probably telling the truth when they say that Coinbase is one of the more reputable companies. But the whole point of DeFi is that you can minimize trust and minimize risk. And if I understand correctly in that situation, what Coinbase really wants is they want to try to make sure that the USDC supply stays high, because they benefit from that because they're a partner with Circle. So they're like basically earning some sort of yield on that behind the scenes. And they're saying, we're willing to give you a cut of it, so long as, you kind of commit to keeping a certain reserve balance of it. But there's no reason why they need to custody that. Like, we can just move it to some smart contract on chain that has well-defined rules about when we can, withdraw from it or whatever, or they can even do what's being done with the GUSD, which is just like, just look at the balance. And if we've maintained a balance above the levels, they pay us. And if we haven't, they don't. And, my argument there when I made that forum comment was that, like, look, if they're going to take it into their custody, that's additional risk for the system, and we need to be compensated for that by some sort of higher rate that they're paying us. Like to me, like if they just take that, especially since the DAO has such weak legal recourse, that's basically an unsecured loan, and we probably ought to get whatever rate Coinbase public debt is trading at, which is probably like 9–10% or something if they're going to custody it. Right, to compensate, maybe it should be less than that, but it should be higher than the whatever small percentage they were going to pay us. Right, we should be compensated for that risk if we go that route. But if they want to pay the low rate, they should do the low risk thing and have it just be custodied on chain in the most secured by the most trustless, resilient system in the world, Ethereum. And then that makes a lot more sense to me, and I'm going to sleep a lot better in that situation. And then the just lower rate is justified. So that's just my thinking there, is that leverage the trust minimization of DeFi wherever possible, and that should be a general principle going forward. Like, whatever you can do on chain, you should.
The issue that can be brought up there, though, is that the original MIP, the Maker Improvement Proposal 81, was written to be off-chain, right, unfortunately. And it was approved by delegates like myself and Tim and others. So
I did not, by the way, but
oh, you did not. I apologize. Yeah, smart man right there. But so the thing is that possibly this could be some kind of amendment in the future when someone does come up with a solution. And what I mean with someone, that sounds like it's CES, right? Collateral Engineering Services. Is there any role that protocol engineering is playing to help out in that process to kind of innovate a smart contract that can do what most of us would like to see, to be honest, even though the MIP wasn't written that way?
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously we can't do anything about the bureaucratic procedural issue here. But as far as the smart contract goes, I did talk to Nikolai from the CS team a bit. He says they're working on it. It's not a very complicated thing really, which is another argument for just going ahead and doing it on chain. It's not like we're writing another maker system. It's just a little custody smart contract, and maybe we don't even need that if they just pay us based on the balance in the PSM, right? Is balance greater than X? If so, then pay. So we're in touch there, and we're ready to help out as much as is possible. But at the same time, we've got a pretty full roadmap, and if CES has it covered, we're happy to like let them handle it, and we'll be the training wheels if necessary. So we're involved there, but not super heavily. Because again, we also try to stick somewhat to whatever mandate governance has prioritized for us, which right now we feel that's around executive spells, D3M, L2 DAI, and now Endgame is starting to enter the planning process. So we're also mindful about getting distracted, but we're absolutely there to step in if needed.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm pretty sure you guys are. So that's why the maker community appreciates protocol engineering very, very much. But I think this subject takes us back to the original question about whether there should be an active DSR in DAI. And the reason why I bring that up is because the macro economy right now, we just saw the Federal Reserve increase interest rates by 75 basis points because they're fighting inflation. They're trying to get it back down to 2%. So in the sense of macro, do you think there is a risk to the PSM where there's so much USDC there that institutional DeFi, because that's a new word that I'm going to start using now, is going to take their USDC back and put that money to work in the real world with treasuries or municipal bonds? I mean, what's your whole thinking there with regards? I mean, I guess it would be a good thing if that USDC would get drained, but then it might depeg DAI. So there's a lot to unpack there. What are your thoughts there with regards to the macro environment, USDC sitting there and kind of not doing anything for anybody?
Yeah, that's an interesting one that I've been thinking about and discussing with people a lot lately, is this interest rate differential between DeFi and TradFi, right? So, like you said, the Federal Reserve has hiked rates pretty aggressively. Inflation seems pretty sticky right now. That this is another whole conversation, is how quickly will inflation come down and by how much. I'm optimistic it'll come down some, but not a lot. So I think we stay in this high rates environment, for an extended period of time. And so then you're like, well, why isn't this gap closing? Like, why is there, billions of USDC, sitting in Aave and Compound earning sub 1% when you can make 4.5% on like a 1-year T-bill, right? Like, why is that? And I think it's a combination of factors. One is that there's a stickiness to crypto where, like, once you've onboarded, it can be hard to, offboard for various reasons. Maybe people are worried about their banks asking questions of like, where did all this money come from that, is coming in through this crypto exchange here? And they're like, it's easier just to leave it on chain. I mean, there are a lot of people who are like philosophically crypto native funds as well. And they're probably just like, yeah, we want to sit on chain and wait for like the next big opportunities to come along. Why convert that back and lock it up in T-bills? And, it's pretty low risk, but I guess rates can always go higher. And then you might need to sell those bonds in a hurry and get back into crypto. And like sometimes opportunities in crypto come very quickly, right? It's like the time it takes you to off ramp from your T-bills and on ramp back to crypto, the opportunity might be gone by then. Some of it might just be people are lazy. Some of it might be people are trapped for not reasons of not wanting to pay taxes. I don't know what fraction of the money that is, but that might be some non-trivial amount. And yeah, I sort of expect we'll start to see some sort of convergence there. I'm surprised we haven't seen more of it. I think in recent weeks, USDC supply has decreased a good bit, so maybe it's starting to happen, but it seems like there's some portion of that for whatever reason is not sufficiently motivated by high rates to move back. And maybe as the consensus changes and more people start to believe that inflation in fact is not transitory, because the Fed got a lot of egg on their face for saying inflation was going to be transitory, and it wasn't. But if you look at the bond market, a lot of bond investors still seem to believe that inflation actually kind of is transitory, that in like a year or 2 or 3, we're going to be back at 2% inflation and it's all going to be fine. And I sort of personally expect that consensus is going to change. So maybe we just haven't seen the belief system change yet and alter that. And, so if we do see that start happening, that might raise the urgency around, going ahead, bumping up the DSR to try to, maintain DAI market share and market cap, and, simultaneously making more aggressive RWA investments to, go ahead and capture and transfer that yield. So, we'll see. I don't claim to understand the market fully here, because I would have thought we would have seen a more dramatic move already, personally.
Yeah, and I agree with you. When in the grand scheme of things, I think this morning was 2.9 billion USDC in the PSM. It's not a lot, right? It's less than 0.05% of the monetary, like as you said, M2. I don't see that money. In other words, institutional DeFi eager to move that money, but I think it's something that we might want to keep an eye on. But what do you think would happen though if all of institutional DeFi and even retail was to come in and, you know, grab their DAI and, you know, just swap it back to USDC?
Well, for a long time, it would be fine, right? Because we have, you know, like 80% of DAI or whatever is backed by USDC. I mean, I think I was maybe the first person in the world to coin the wrapped USDC moniker for DAI, and that was back when it was at like, you know, 50% or something. So as ugly as that is from a decentralization perspective, you know, it cushions us for a long time against DAI outflows. Basically, you know, the DAI market cap could shrink by a factor of 5 before there's any like threat to the peg really, because of all that USDC there. And then if it starts to go beyond that, where, you know, we hit the zero bound in terms of the amount of USDC we have, you know, then you have to start raising rates. Right, and like even probably before you hit the zero bound, you'd start raising rates. You can raise the DSR and you can raise borrowing rates. If you raise borrowing rates, you're going to, you know, destroy demand for leverage, right, and create a bid for DAI from people who want to pay back their loans, or you just slow down the growth and creation of new loans. So you slow down the DAI going into the market, and you increase the DSR, you increase demand to hold DAI out there. And therefore, you know, decrease the incentive to redeem it for USDC and move to TradFi. And, you know, you know, you see market caps shrink a lot, right? Like if liquidity really does start to drain out of crypto, you know, DAI market cap goes down, probably the price of everything, price of all tokens goes down as liquidity leaves, because crypto prices, I think, are heavily liquidity driven and influenced. And yeah, you know, it just looks like a big crypto recession. You know, I don't think the protocol necessarily dies. I think you would have to cut spend a lot in that case, because your income would be a lot less. But you know, the system can survive. And you know, maybe then we can get back to it would actually maybe be really interesting if we got back to the point where we had very little centralized collateral, and then we could say, hey, maybe this is a chance to reset, implement a TRFM and go the decentralized route. That could be, I think it would be really interesting, but it would also be a very trying time, because you'd probably have to, you know, reduce core unit sizes and stuff like that. So probably ultimately not a great thing, but you know, there's always a silver lining.
So do you think it's possible to scale something where the TRFM is calling for, you know, 1.02 versus the US dollar, or what have you, 105, kind of the euro versus the dollar trading? Do you think that's something that can scale, or, but as you said, it's going to be a painful time in MakerDAO history?
Yeah. So to me, well, let me explain finally what the TRFM is exactly. The TRFM is basically, well, it's a target rate feedback mechanism. So first, what's a target rate? And then we'll get to the feedback mechanism part. Target rate just means some sort of rate of change that's applied to the target price of DAI, which basically means the peg, right? Right now, the peg is fixed at $1. But you could say, we're going to make the target rate 2%. And that means, you know, every year the price increase, the target peg price increases by 2%. Or it could be negative, and you say, you know, it's negative 2%, so it's going to decrease by 2% every year. And then the feedback mechanism part is something that looks at the difference between the actual market price of DAI and the current target price, and changes that rate based on the error, the tracking error between the market price and the target price. So like if you had a situation back where we had in summer of 2020, where the target price was $1 and the market price was, you know, like $1.05, what the TRFM would do is it would actually set, in that case, a negative rate on the target price. And so like the target price would be decreasing. So it'd be 1.0, 0.999, 0.998, you know, like on a weekly or monthly basis, something like that. It's, you know, and think about what incentive that creates then. Okay, so if you're a borrower, and the system is denominating your debt based on the target price of DAI, and it's pricing your collateral, in dollars, basically your debt is shrinking over time relative to the value of your collateral. You've got $100 of collateral and you've got 50 DAI drawn. Well, at the start, the system says, okay, I'm counting that as $50 of debt, but then the target price goes down and now you've got $49 of debt. Well, eventually at some point you start saying, hey, look, I can borrow more here. I've got more overhead margin on my loan. I can take more out and sell it. And so what is that doing? That's creating supply, and that should drive market price down, which is what we want, right? Because the market price was above target price. And that's the mechanism of action of the TRFM. And in the reverse situation of market price under target price, then you have a positive rate, and it's incentivizing borrowers to buy back or to take less debt. And it's sort of similar to just it's like a DSR that goes both ways, but it's a little more subtle because it's not just like immediately affecting the amount of DAI that somebody's holding in their wallet or something like that, right? Like if you deposit into the DSR, you just get more DAI over time if there's a positive rate. But the DSR can't do a negative rate for obvious reasons because it's opt-in, and it's not directly affecting borrowers either. And so the TRFM is this way of balancing supply and demand with this rate mechanism. And to me, it's the thing you choose if you want to prioritize decentralization over scale and growth, because like I said, the scaling really relies on collateral and solving the collateral problem. If you don't feel like you can solve the collateral problem safely, but you still want to balance supply and demand, you can do the TRFM. And like this is what RAI has done. They've implemented the TRFM and using only ETH collateral. And I think if you look at that system, you say it's very successful in the goal of functioning, in that RAI keeps its peg. There's no crisis of confidence. There's no death spiral. But it really hasn't been able to scale up to like a DAI level market cap. And I think a big part of that is that the TRFM will happily destroy demand. And I think that was probably the reason the TRFM wasn't originally chosen back in 2020 when we had this persistently high peg problem, is that it probably would have led to demand destruction for DAI, right? There's like this big negative rate on the currency, and the decision, I guess, from our holders was to prioritize preserving network effect, preserving market cap, preserving growth, and trying to win the market as opposed to preserving decentralization. If the regulatory regime and sort of world situation changes in a way that decentralization becomes the only way to survive, then I think you really do need a TRFM, or else you're not going to be able to balance supply and demand very well. I mean, you look at something like Liquidity, LUSD, right? You could argue it's maybe like the most decentralized stablecoin in existence, right? They have very high levels of immutability. They can't even change the oracles, but they have no intrinsic, like rate mechanism to react to market moves. And so that coin is very volatile and can be have persistent errors in one direction or the other relative to its peg target. And that limits its usefulness as a money. Whereas with the TRFM, you actually get tighter adherence to the peg, and you can look at RAI and see that it does indeed work pretty well. And if you want to have a decentralized stablecoin that's really fully decentralized, right now I think you need a TRFM to do it right. And if you want to scale the TRFM, like if you've solved the collateral problem, you can have a TRFM at scale. But until you solve the collateral problem, you're not going to be able to scale with or without a TRFM.
And the collateral problem, the answer to that in the near term is the protocol-owned vault, known as the POV, protocol-owned vault emulator. What are your thoughts there? Because that's going to help bring in more decentralized collateral like ETH, stake ETH, etc.
Well, you're still limited by the amount of collateral out there, though. Sure, it's good, banks or other financial institutions will hold various assets directly on their balance sheet. Why shouldn't Maker do the same? But right, like what's the best you can do? Okay, you can take the surplus buffer and just buy a bunch of stuff with it, and if you're lucky, that stuff goes up, and maybe you can even collateralize a little bit of MKR or something, and that a protocol owned vault with MKR in it is basically fractional reserve by other means. It's just backing your stable coin with your equity, and like we discussed earlier, there's a limit to which you can do that. Maybe you can do that for 1, 2, 5% of supply or something, and it's fine, right? Like look at Frax. Frax has been fine with low percentages of uncollateralized or under collateralization. But like at best, you're boosting the market cap you can support by some single or low double-digit percentage of what it would have been without that. So I think it's good, but I don't think it represents like a sea change for the protocol. It's not a regime shift.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the whole subject matter of this conversation with you, Kurt, has been about perhaps there's not enough decentralized collateral in the world right now to help make a decentralized stablecoin scale. So, love your thoughts on there. I would like to see you dig in a little bit more into the end game. It does have a proposal there for something similar, and I think it might be the same thing as the TRFM, which is called the stability fee-based rate. Maybe it's just being rebranded in that way in the end game plan.
Possibly.
Which is, yeah, and it's pretty much what you said, an active supply and demand lever, right? So it's possible that we will see that eventually. But with all this in mind, what keeps you worried right now when you go to bed? Like, what keeps you up at night with regards to MakerDAO, the protocol? Is it just more of the possibility of a bug or a rug? Or what keeps you up at night?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always going to be worried about bugs or some sort of malfunction in the systems. I lived through Black Thursday at Maker. That was a pretty formative experience for me, right? So I'm always worried about, our auction's going to, fail again, or is there going to be some other bug in the protocol? I've gotten a lot more relaxed about that over time as the system has proven itself. But every time, we ship a big upgrade or something, I'm always worried a little bit afresh about that. That's one thing. Honestly, another thing is like the regulatory environment. We just had the Tornado Cash sanctions come down, which were kind of a watershed moment. And, MakerDAO is in this position where it has like a lot of centralized collateral, but DAI itself, the DAI coin, is very censorship resistant. And, like we literally can't make DAI censorable in terms of being able to seize individual user balances, which I think would be like the first kind of enforcement request we'd probably get. Is like, hey, look, you make this DAI thing. There's this person over here, we don't like them, or this entity, this nation state, whatever. Can you freeze their DAI balance? And we have to be like literally we can't. Like we'd have to redeploy. We'd have to shut down the system and redeploy. So we're not able to do it. And at that point they say, okay, well, then you better figure out a way to do it, or we're just going to like declare you, illegal and sanction you, and all your centralized collateral, it's gone in an instant. And then DAI depegs, and you get some sort of crazy event. And so that worries me quite a bit too, that we have all this centralized collateral and a literally uncensorable stablecoin, and that might create some sort of unresolvable contradiction from a regulatory perspective. So that ties back into my saying, we need a crypto reformation where like the people demand the right to transact, and governments just can't violate that because there'd be mass uprising in the street. It's like people have said, look, we don't want to be censored, and we're willing to go full anarchy if you try to do that to us. So I guess I'm here on a recorded podcast calling for basically a crypto revolution. So that's going to be great for me, not being on watch lists and stuff, right? So.
Yeah, but I really doubt that this revolution can ever happen without the proper adoption. And right now we are not there, because nobody cares about decentralization right now. We do, maybe, but not the users. They are fine with everything. They are probably more attracted by the DSR than by anything else. That would be something that would help. Yeah.
I agree. We have to get the tech to a point where it could feasibly be adopted, and have it ready for, you know, the moment as more and more people, you know, see the light. And, you know, I think over the last couple of years, you know, even in the West, you've seen a lot of incidents where more people are waking up to, you know, how much control can be exerted through the financial system. But, you know, you're right. We've got to have the tech and the product and the experience to be something that's actually viable. You know, right now it still looks a little too much like a proof of concept, as opposed to a fully finished, you know, ready for global adoption and, you know, mass, like running the whole financial system through it. So
yeah, but bear markets are for building, right? So maybe it's good. You don't have the luxury problem of not needing to care about this. So maybe this is just healthy.
Yeah, so, you know, so I think the game is to stay alive and build and keep as many of the principles, you know, preserved as possible, and be ready for when the people are ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great way to end it. Terrific words of wisdom there from you, Kurt. Really appreciate it having you here. Tim and I hosting you. This was such a wonderful talk. Learned so much just from your wisdom and years of building a MakerDAO. And let's hope that humanity comes around and we take this thing to a greater pasture.
Thank you, guys. I appreciated it.
MakerDAO.